Many work hours went into this garage before it finally looked the way it looks today. I want to give you some insights into the journey of building KITT's semi-garage. It all began with a Garden of Horrors, which could easily have passed as a perfect horror movie film set. And after we had everything chopped down, we actually found the house hiding beneath all that jungle. In the end, we tore down almost everything except for the basement. Of course, the old garage was left standing, and certainly not without some motivation behind. And after we had finished the construction and renovation work, the time finally came to make my vision become a reality. For mounting the inner walls of the semi, I went to attach wood beams to the substructure first. Then I mounted the sheet metal plates on top. Mounting the panels in the far end corner was a bit tricky because of the main water pipe that leads into the building. Some adjustment work and lots of swearing later, the panel was eventually mounted there as well. The workshop is adjoined to the garage, with a door leading right into it. For the sake of optics, I covered up the door with the metal sheet panels as well. In the episode Trust Doesn't Rust, we witness Carr invading the flag compound. At this point, we see Bonnie calling up the security guards from within the semi. As a little gag, I couldn't resist getting the same Cortelco telephone and mounting it to the wall panel. Of course, I pulled up a 2-wire copper line to allow for connecting the telephone to a landline. For the ceiling lighting, I first built wooden frames to eventually become light boxes. I painted them white on the inside for a better reflection behavior. I then also installed some rails to hold the LED strips. Finally, I added a white laminated OSB board on the backside. It may look easier than it actually was, but believe me, mounting the light boxes to the ceiling was not easy. The alignment took actually quite some time, as this garage was obviously built by a drunk back in 1974. It must have been like that, because otherwise you can't explain why the garage's white is different on one end and the other. Someone definitely put up a sloping wall here. Anyway, at some point the first 2 light boxes were attached to the ceiling, and albeit with still flying cables, I had to make a first functional test. And this is what it eventually looked like with 4 light boxes installed. In the series, the light boxes were all contiguous, of course. Due to the structural conditions of the garage door as well as the carriage and the motor, I had to make some adjustments here. As things started to become, KITT was also very happy to move into his new home. The walls of the semi were segmented by black pillars and struts. No question, I wanted to have the same looks. First, I had some wood beams painted black. Once dried, I attached them to the lower and upper ends of the metal sheet panels as a border element. For a long time, I've been looking for suiting spotlights, somewhat reminiscent to the ones seen from Season 2 onwards. I eventually found some spotlights, though I had to modify them a little bit to get the actual look I was after. For installing the spotlights, I again painted some wood beams in black, not without adding mounting holes for the cable bushings as well, of course. Meanwhile, I had also built a substructure on the ceiling. This would allow me to mount the spotlights and also the ceiling panels in a later step. With the spotlights being ready, I installed them to allow for measurement and installation of the electric wiring. Then I went on with the pillars and, in particular, the cross struts. After, once again, some more painting work, I could install them as well. And in case you've been wondering where I got the proper dimensions and measurements from, well, there is no exact measurements, at least none that is officially documented. I took a very close look at freeze frames from the TV series. I also counted the elements from different angles and perspectives, essentially guessing the width of the elements. In the end, I had to adapt my guesses to the givens of my garage. You remember that door on one side? This door ultimately dictated the spacing of the elements without introducing optical imbalances. Let's look again at the incoming water pipe. It disturbs me, hence it must be hidden away somehow. Luckily there were so many computer consoles in the Semi that it makes sense to build something like that as a disguise element. I covered the chipboard box with some black foam panels. The top section features a few dozen LEDs doing the happy blinking lights flash dance. At some point I want to invest some more time to recreate this panel with a more faithful likeness to what we saw on TV. For the moment, this is good enough to hide away the water pipe. For the ceiling paneling, I used the same lightweight foam panels that I applied to the computer console scene before. Finally, the floor also gets a cladding. In the series, it looked like the floor of the Semi was made of checker plates. I bought plastic plates with a checker plate look. These are also commonly used in car showrooms and are therefore strong enough to carry KITT's roughly 1.8 tons. I must say it really started to become very fancy. The looks is definitely reminiscent of the inside of the Semi, but there are still a few things missing. In order to beautify the whole thing a little bit, I mounted various pictures and posters. Also, the backside wall is not exactly an art piece. But luckily my wife stepped in, sewing me a curtain much like the one we saw in the season 3 pilot episode. Over the course of season 2, the drop-down computer was a frequent guest on the Semi. I was never able to find out what that device actually was. Both radios and oscilloscopes were mentioned as potential candidates, but no one actually came up with the real answer. Ultimately, everything boiled down to recreating the Diagnostics computer. Unfortunately, I made a little mistake in the width of the unit. That's why I added an imaginary floppy drive to the right hand side. This of course was never seen like that in the series, call it creative freedom. The same also applies to the USB port, which I now can use to connect the Arduino for reprogramming without the need of removing it beforehand. In the series, we saw the device being suspended from the ceiling on a telescopic arm. That's not possible for me because up there in the ceiling is simply no space. So I came up with the second best choice, which is a swiveling arm carrying the Diagnostics computer. Overall, the conversion of the garage between July 2017 and February 2018, and most recently between September 2020 and March 2021 for the drop-down computer, consumed a mere 200 work hours at least. In the end, it was definitely worth it, because who has a garage that looks like the Semi's interior after all? I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, then please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Which video would you like to see next? Let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.